December 19th, 1944. Bastogne, Belgium. Snow and ice choke the shattered town as German artillery hammers the perimeter without pause. The 101st Airborne Division is completely surrounded. Nearly 10,000 American soldiers trapped in frozen foxholes and collapsing cellars, rationing ammunition, reusing blood-stiff bandages, and treating the wounded with almost no medical supplies left. Thick winter clouds ground Allied aircraft, cutting off air support and supply drops. German panzer divisions close in from all sides, their engines rumbling through the snow, waiting for hunger, cold, and fear to finish what the shells have started. Every hour that passes brings Bastogne closer to collapse, and the men inside know it. Somewhere in the dark, a paratrooper asks how long they can hold. No one answers, because no one knows if dawn will come. Hundreds of miles away, Supreme Allied Headquarters is tense and silent. General Dwight D. Eisenhower stands over a map marked with red arrows and blue pins, his face drawn with exhaustion. Bastogne is a small town, but at this moment it holds the fate of the entire Allied front. Eisenhower asks his advisors quietly, how long can they hold? The reply is brutal, for days, maybe less. If Bastogne falls, the German offensive could tear open the Allied lines, shatter morale, and turn a winter setback into a strategic disaster. Logistics officers warn that the roads are frozen, fuel is scarce, and enemy armor dominates the region. Relief, they say, is nearly impossible. Eisenhower feels the weight of every trapped soldier pressing down on him, and in his private thoughts he admits this is the darkest moment since D-Day. His eyes settle on one name, George S. Patton. Brilliant, aggressive, dangerous. The one commander reckless enough to attempt what logic says cannot be done. Eisenhower knows Patton's speed could save Bastogne, or cost thousands of lives if it fails. Back in the frozen town, artillery slams again, medics fight to keep men alive, and officers count the last shells. Time is running out. 4 days. As Eisenhower prepares to make the call, one impossible question hangs in the air. Can Patton move fast enough, or will the 101st Airborne be wiped out before help ever arrives? December 19th, 1944. Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, Verdun. The room is quiet in the way only command rooms become quiet when history is about to bend. Maps cover the long table, their edges curled from constant handling, red arrows cutting violently through Belgium. Cigarette smoke hangs low. Faces are drawn, eyes sunken from sleepless nights. Eisenhower stands at the center, hands resting on the map, staring at Bastogne, small, circled, bleeding. The reports are blunt. The 101st Airborne is surrounded, outnumbered, and running out of ammunition, food, and medical supplies. The winter storm has locked the sky shut. No air support. No drops. Bastogne is holding on by discipline and will alone. Eisenhower finally breaks the silence. How quickly can we mount a relief operation? The question hangs in the air longer than anyone is comfortable with. Generals exchange glances, mentally measuring distances, fuel consumption, frozen roads, German armor. One commander speaks carefully. Sir, under these conditions, we're looking at least a week. Maybe more. Eisenhower's jaw tightens. We don't have a week, he says flatly. 4 days. 4 days is all they have. No one argues. They don't need to. Everyone in the room understands what failure means. Not just the destruction of an airborne division, but a blow to Allied morale that could ripple across the entire front. The problem is brutally clear. Allied forces in the north are engaged and pinned. Units in the south are positioned the wrong way, facing east, not north. To reach Bastogne would require a complete pivot. 3 divisions turning 90 degrees in the middle of winter, marching nearly 100 miles through snow-choked roads under constant threat of German counterattack. Trucks won't start, fuel freezes. Men freeze. Supply lines stretch thin to the breaking point. On paper, it can't be done. Eisenhower knows it. The room knows it. That's what makes the next voice so jarring. George S. Patton leans forward, calm, certain. I can do it. Heads turn. Patton continues, his finger tracing a route across the map. 3 divisions. 48 to 72 hours. We pivot north and drive straight for Bastogne. There's a murmur now, quiet disbelief, whispers exchanged behind cupped hands. Someone shakes his head. Another mutters, impossible. Eisenhower looks directly at Patton. George, he says slowly, can you genuinely do this? Patton doesn't hesitate. I've already prepared contingency plans, whether clears or not. December 22nd, my 4th Armored Division attacks north. The room goes still. This isn't bravado. It's preparation. Patton had anticipated the crisis before it fully formed. Eisenhower feels hope rise, and immediately crushes it back down. Hope is dangerous at this level. He warns Patton plainly. If this fails, we lose the 101st. We lose Bastogne. And the responsibility will be yours. Patton nods once. I understand, sir. His voice doesn't waver. He talks logistics now, march discipline, fuel prioritization, engineers clearing roads under fire. It sounds controlled, calculated, but still reckless. Still unprecedented. Eisenhower listens, weighing not just strategy, but lives. Thousands of them. He thinks of the paratroopers freezing in cellars, of medics choosing who gets the last morphine shot. He thinks of America watching, waiting, unaware how close disaster truly is. December 20th becomes December 21st. Orders are drafted. Units begin to turn south to north, columns grinding into motion. The countdown has begun. 48 hours. Then 72. Every delay could be fatal. Eisenhower signs the final authorization and pauses for just a moment, pen hovering over paper. This decision will define him as much as any victory. He looks at Patton one last time. Don't fail, he says quietly. Patton meets his gaze. We won't. By December 22nd, the plan demands action. Engines roar to life in the snow. Steel columns begin the impossible march. Behind them, Bastogne waits. The clock is ticking. Will Patton reach the town in time, or will the gamble cost everything? Act 3 begins as the march into history starts. December 20th, 1944. The pivot begins. Patton's Third Army disengages from its southern positions and turns 90 degrees north, a maneuver no army should attempt in winter, under fire, against a determined enemy. Snow clogs engines. Ice locks steering wheels. Tanks slide into ditches and have to be dragged free by crews with frozen hands. Artillery crews haul guns across roads that barely qualify as roads at all, narrow, broken ribbons buried under drifts. Infantry march hour after hour, boots soaked, feet numb, breath hanging in the air like smoke. German artillery finds the columns quickly. Shells burst along the routes. Ambushes slow progress. Every mile is paid for in exhaustion and blood. By December 21st, Eisenhower receives hourly updates. Pins move slowly on the map, painfully slowly. He studies them in silence, calculating distances again and again, knowing the math no longer favors hope. In Bastogne, the 101st Airborne is barely holding. Ammunition is critically low. Medical supplies are exhausted. Surgeons operate without proper light, without anesthesia, without heat. Wounded men shiver in basements as shells crash overhead. Outside the town, German infantry probes closer, testing weak points, supported by tanks rumbling through the snow. That same day, a German delegation approaches with a surrender demand. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe's reply is brief, defiant, almost absurd under the circumstances: nuts. The word spreads through the lines like fire, lifting spirits even as hunger and cold gnaw at the men. December 22nd. Patton launches the main attack. The 4th Armored Division punches north, tank guns flashing in the snowstorm. Progress is measured in yards, not miles. German roadblocks resist fiercely. Bridges are blown. Engineers work under fire, rebuilding crossings with frozen fingers. Eisenhower stands over his map again, receiving reports every hour. Slow progress. Heavy resistance. Weather worsening. In his private thoughts, the weight becomes almost unbearable. If they fail, 10,000 paratroopers are lost, he thinks. And the Ardennes campaign may collapse with them. He drafts contingency letters he hopes he will never send, knowing a supreme commander must prepare for failure even while praying for success. December 23rd brings a fragile miracle. The clouds finally begin to break. Allied aircraft roar overhead, dropping supplies into Bastogne. Crates fall through the gray sky, ammunition, food, medical kits, some landing in German lines, many reaching American hands. Cheers echo through the ruined town as paratroopers drag parachutes through the snow. It is not enough to save them alone, but it buys time. Patton's columns continue to grind forward, mile by mile, through relentless resistance. Reports arrive at Eisenhower's headquarters. Staff officers whisper to one another, disbelief creeping into their voices. He's actually doing it. December 24th. Christmas Eve. German counterattacks intensify, desperate to crush Bastogne before relief arrives. Artillery pounds the town relentlessly. Inside cellars, soldiers huddle together, sharing memories of home, clutching rifles with cracked hands. Outside, Patton's lead elements fight brutal engagements at villages whose names will soon be etched into history. Every delay feels fatal. Eisenhower watches the clock. The original 4-day estimate has been stretched to its limit. He sends another message to Patton: maximum effort. The 101st cannot hold much longer. Patton's reply is calm, almost cold. We are attacking continuously. We will break through. December 25th. Christmas Day. Snow blankets the battlefield like a cruel parody of peace. Patton's armor pushes through fierce resistance at Eisenhower, just south of Bastogne. German defenders fight stubbornly, knowing what a breakthrough would mean. Eisenhower barely leaves his office. He eats little, sleeps less. He studies the map again and again, eyes burning, mind racing. One more day, he thinks. Just one more. Inside Bastogne, the men of the 101st hold their positions, sustained by stubborn pride and the knowledge that help is somewhere out there, moving, fighting, coming closer. Hours crawl by. Morning fades into afternoon. Reports filter in, some encouraging, some grim. Then, late in the day, a message arrives that changes everything. Patton's lead tank has broken through the German lines. Contact has been made. Eisenhower closes his eyes for a long moment, the tension finally cracking. But the fight is not yet over. German forces still surround the town, and the corridor is narrow and fragile. Reinforcements must widen it, secure it, hold it. As the night of December 25th falls, the impossible march nears its climax. December 26th waits, just beyond the darkness. The question still hangs in the frozen air: will Patton's gamble truly save Bastogne, or will the relief arrive too late? Act 4 begins at first light, when history delivers its final answer. December 26th, 1944. Morning breaks over the Ardennes under a sky still heavy with winter. Snow crunches beneath boots hardened by days of marching and fighting. Patton's Third Army is exhausted, battered, and running on sheer momentum, but it is close now, so close that the thunder of artillery can be felt in the chest. Tanks grind forward through drifts and shattered villages, engines roaring defiantly against the cold. German positions resist stubbornly, firing from tree lines and roadblocks, but the momentum has shifted. Artillery clears paths. Infantry advances behind steel and smoke. The impossible march has reached its final miles. Outside Bastogne, the men of the 101st Airborne hear it before they see it. A different rhythm of gunfire. Deeper. Heavier. American. Heads rise above foxholes. Officers strain their eyes through the snow. Then it happens. A lead tank of the 4th Armored Division breaks through the German line, its star barely visible beneath frozen mud. Soldiers follow, weapons raised, moving fast despite exhaustion. A paratrooper stares in disbelief, then laughs, half hysterical. "They're here," he shouts. "They actually made it." Hands slap helmets. Men stumble forward, gripping rifles, some crying openly, others too tired for words. The siege is broken. Bastogne is no longer alone. The first contact is awkward, almost quiet. A tank commander leans out of his hatch, shouting over the engine. "You boys from the 101st?" A paratrooper nods, face hollow but eyes burning. "Damn right," he replies. Someone slaps the side of the tank. Someone else just sits down in the snow, finally letting the tension drain away. The relief is physical. Immediate. The wounded are moved. Ammunition flows in. The narrow corridor is fragile, but it exists, and that is enough. For now. At Supreme Headquarters, the phone rings in the late afternoon. December 26th, 1944, 4:50 p.m. Eisenhower's aide answers, then freezes. He hands the receiver to Eisenhower without a word. Eisenhower listens, shoulders stiff, heart pounding. Patton's voice comes through the line, calm, unmistakable. "Ike," he says, "we're through to Bastogne." For a long moment, Eisenhower cannot speak. The room fades. The map blurs. When he finally exhales, it feels like the first breath he's taken in days. "Thank God," he whispers. Then louder, steady again, "Well done, George. Well done." When the call ends, Eisenhower lowers the phone slowly. His shoulders drop. His eyes glisten, just for a second, before discipline reasserts itself. Staff officers exchange looks of disbelief and awe. Someone murmurs, almost reverently, "He actually did it." Eisenhower turns back to the map, Bastogne no longer circled in despair, but connected, alive. In public, he will praise the operation in measured terms. In private, he allows himself the truth. Patton has saved 10,000 men. And perhaps the entire campaign. On the ground, the soldiers of the 101st Airborne greet their rescuers with battered smiles and handshakes that linger. They are gaunt, frostbitten, filthy, but unbroken. Patton arrives later, gruff as ever, eyes scanning the scene. He nods once, satisfied. "You boys held," he says simply. "Proud of you." When someone thanks him, he waves it away. "Just doing my job," he mutters. The men did the real work. But those who see him notice the flicker of pride. He knows what this march cost, and what it proved. Strategically, the breakthrough changes everything. Bastogne holds. German momentum falters. The Ardennes offensive begins to bleed out, its gamble spent. What was nearly a catastrophic defeat becomes a turning point, forged by audacity and endurance. 3 divisions moved nearly 100 miles, pivoted 90 degrees, fought through blizzards, fuel shortages, and relentless resistance, and arrived just in time. It is operational genius made real by human will. That night, Eisenhower writes quietly in his notes. Not for the press. Not for history books. Just for himself. Patton has saved Bastogne, he reflects. And in doing so, he has saved the Ardennes campaign. What we witnessed was not recklessness, but brilliance, carried by courage. Outside, snow continues to fall, covering the scars of battle. Inside the headquarters, the tension finally loosens its grip. The crisis has passed, but the story is not over. The war will grind on. Decisions will still haunt Eisenhower. And Patton's legacy, controversial, brilliant, dangerous, will demand reckoning. Act 5 awaits, where victory turns into reflection, and history begins to weigh what this moment truly meant. December 27, 1944. The guns around Bastogne are quieter now. At Supreme Headquarters, Eisenhower sits alone longer than usual, the map still spread across his desk. Bastogne is no longer circled in red. Lines now connect it to the rest of the Allied front. Relief has come, but the weight of what nearly happened has not lifted. In his private notes that night, he allows himself honesty. The danger was greater than the public will ever know, he writes. The responsibility was absolute. Had we failed, the cost in lives and morale would have been devastating. He pauses, pen hovering, then adds the name he cannot ignore, Patton. His audacity, under conditions that defied logic, justified the trust placed in him. In the days that follow, Eisenhower writes to Patton personally. The tone is warm, but measured, dated December 27, 1944. He praises the speed, the preparation, the relentless drive that broke the siege and saved the 101st Airborne. He also reminds Patton, gently but firmly, of the fine line he walks. Great talent, Eisenhower knows, must be guided, not unleashed without restraint. Patton is brilliant, fearless, and difficult. Exactly the kind of commander war both demands and punishes. Eisenhower understands that managing such men is as important as trusting them. In separate correspondence to his senior staff, and in guarded messages to leaders like General George Marshall and Winston Churchill, Eisenhower is more candid. The relief of Bastogne, he admits, was a turning point in the Battle of the Bulge. Had it failed, the Ardennes offensive might have spiraled into disaster. Patton's rapid pivot of 3 divisions, nearly 100 miles through winter hell, stands as one of the most remarkable operational feats of the war. Publicly, Eisenhower praises teamwork and Allied resilience. Privately, he acknowledges how close the gamble came to catastrophe, and how much rested on one man's willingness to act before certainty was possible. By January 2, 1945, Eisenhower reflects again, this time more quietly. He thinks of the paratroopers who held Bastogne with frozen hands and empty stomachs. Of medics who worked until they collapsed. Of tank crews who drove through blizzards without knowing if the road ahead even existed. Leadership, he realizes, is not about brilliance alone. It is about moral burden. About choosing who to trust when the cost of error is measured in thousands of lives. Command, he writes later in his memoirs, means accepting responsibility not just for victory, but for every risk taken to achieve it. Patton's relief of Bastogne becomes legend, but Eisenhower never allows himself to romanticize it fully. He remembers the sleepless nights, the contingency plans, the letters he nearly sent to grieving families. He remembers the fear that the gamble might fail. And yet, he also remembers the moment the phone rang on December 26, and the relief that followed. In his memoirs years later, Eisenhower writes with clarity earned through distance, "Patton's relief of Bastogne vindicated my trust. It demonstrated operational excellence at the highest level and reminded me that extraordinary talent must sometimes be managed, not constrained. The Battle of the Bulge will end in Allied victory. History will record the dates, the movements, the casualties. But beneath those facts lie decisions made in silence, under crushing pressure. The choice to trust Patton. The courage of soldiers who endured the impossible. The resilience of men who refused to break when surrounded by snow, steel, and despair. In the end, Bastogne is more than a battle. It is a lesson. That leadership demands risk. That audacity, when paired with preparation, can change the course of history. And that courage, whether in a frozen foxhole or a quiet command room, defines the true measure of those who carry the weight of war. History remembers the victory. Eisenhower remembered the decision.